Get through.
Yeah, no, you can. It says we start at 5:45, approximately 6:30.
Oh, okay. If you guys, I'm
Nicole's
not
ready.
called to order. So we
Wait,
can,
I just want to check Nicole had to redo equipment.
Oh, yeah.
So, one second.
Nicole, she can like flash this. What can she do? How does she give us the signal?
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Do we have to do it again?
What's that?
The Pledge of
They did
Allegiance?
Pledge of Allegiance. We don't have to do it again.
Nice.
And we don't have to do roll call again. Do we?
Yes, because that was not an official meeting, that was ceremonial.
Okay, do a roll call.
Well,
And
you
we
tell
all
me.
showed up.
You can do it.
No, it says a regular meeting of the city council at 5:45 at the Square House.
Okay, all right.
I mean, it's not a big deal, but like, I don't think we need, like, I'm just going to number 3.
Confirm. She's probably not there yet.
Yeah.
Josh stayed there. Are you going to bring it up during your business? Yeah, you know what? She touched it.
What do you bring here?
Yeah, we did the whole. I loved it. It was amazing. Loved it. Loved it. I did get a.
Okay, I'll do it. You want me to do it in old business, new
But,
business?
We could, why don't we just do it up front?
I'll do it right up front.
I'll do it, I'll send to you.
definitely, there was vegetarian, there was chicken, there was pork.
Get it done. All right, we're good to go. All right, you guys, we're going to get it rolling. We've done the Pledge of Allegiance. We've done roll call. So I'm moving right to the draft of unapproved minutes
Frank, did you want to do roll call?
What? No.
for the regular meeting of City Council on October 23rd. Any comments? Did you receive anything? We have a motion.
I will make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So before, I'm going to add something here prior to the report of the city manager. I'm going to hand over to Josh Nathan.
Hi, real quick. Again, Kristen, you got some comments from some of us about, lots of us over the last period about signs and the sign law in Rye, and we appreciate that there is some work that needs to be done. And you asked for direction from the dais to engage some expertise to assist us. So if you want to tell us what you need, I'm looking forward to supporting it. I'm sure many of us, if not all of us, would love to help us resolve this in a good way.
Sure. So thank you for recognizing the comments and the issues that we're facing with respect to our sign law. Several years ago, we started to take a look at it. For a variety of reasons, we stopped. But what I would like to hear from at least 4 of you this evening is affirmative direction towards drafting or providing the City Council with a new draft of our sign law, and to allow me to retain special counsel that has an expertise in First Amendment issues to address some of the loopholes in our law. And if you would be so kind as to direct me to do that with a motion and a
budget?
second.
Do you have
And
a sense?
I would ask, I have reached out to our outside counsel that has worked with the city before. I would ask for an initial amount of not to exceed $25,000.
Do you have that in the legal budget that you can?
No, it would come out of contingency, so you would make that part of the resolution.
Okay, so the motion is to put an amount not to exceed $25,000 for out of contingency to fund First Amendment lawyer to help us review and revise and draft a potentially new sign law for consideration.
Julie, can we add to that? It happened first of the new year. Like, we don't delay this anymore, that we have it happen as soon as possible.
Well, we're going to do it right now.
I think that's
That's the implication.
the intention.
That's-
is
yeah.
to get this
There's a-
done, and that's
that's
why
it.
we're
Good.
talking
So
about
I will
this
make that
now.
motion.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Cunningham?
Yes.
Councilwoman Goddard?
Yes.
Councilman Henderson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Jensen?
Yes.
Councilman Nathan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Souza?
Yes.
Mayor Cohen is absent.
Okay.
Thanks.
Now we're going to the report of the city manager.
Okay. Thank you all. I guess first and foremost, thanks to Ann Gold and the Historical Society, as well as Drew Ferris and Public Works staff and John Sullivan for organizing tonight's meeting at the Square House. This is the first time it's happened since 2019. So thanks to all those who helped make that happen. Earlier this week, we started work at Nursery Field. Thus far, that work has been limited to removing and cutting of dead trees. invasive vines and debris that was on the northeast corner of the field. I was over there today. Construction fencing is being erected now in anticipation of our contractor being on site in the next few days to get things started. There will be the most significant amount of work will take place over the next several months as we remove the top layer and store the stormwater system, the retaining wall, and the like. And then, weather permitting, the carpet would be actually laid down sometime late winter or spring. So, and we'll continue to update.
Get weather like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go.
We'll continue to post all relevant information to the city website just to make people aware of that. Following the council discussion most recently regarding Nursery Field, we did engage tenant engineering to clarify the required deposit of the soil to a solid waste facility. The requirement is related to the construction debris in the topsoil, meaning crushed brick and other solid materials, not related to the toxins that were found in the subsoil. We are following up on the question about the field perimeter. The preliminary test results conclude there is no necessary remediation, but we'll have a memo to that effect probably within the next week to 10 days. As I spoke the last meeting, due to some issues we've had at the fields at Disbro with people and their dogs, we have posted signs at all of the fields at Disbro alerting folks to the local code that requires leashing of their dogs as well as cleanup. We have passed out flyers, we posted social media, and we have had PD personnel at the field with some regularity over the last week just to reinforce that requirement. On Monday, November 25th, the New York State Department of Homeland Security, as well as our own emergency services personnel, will be hosting our first ever resident preparedness event here at City Hall. It'll happen in the evening on that Monday. The focus is on preparedness for residents. This is not on city actions. This is what residents can do to be prepared for emergencies, whether they be floods or snowstorms or something else. Brian Shea's been coordinating the event. Within the next week to 10 days, we'll begin publicizing the event. The first focus will be on seniors, the senior community, and then we'll roll it out to everyone else. But that'll take place here on that Monday night, the 25th. And then as a final reminder, Veterans Day is Monday. It should be a very special Veterans Day service on the town green at 10:30, as well as the unveiling of the new plaques that everyone's been working so hard on.
Very exciting.
And that's it for tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, just another note on that, and I'm sure it'll come up. There has been a subcommittee working literally for years on the new plaques and the memorials, and I just want to thank you, Noga, for getting it across the finish line, because I know it took a lot, and there's a lot to manage there, so thank you. Rytown Park letter of support. Greg, do you want to just briefly?
Sure. Rytown Park has been looking for quite some time at some solutions to flooding that occurs in the park, starting at the duck pond and then over the sand walkway and onto the beach. It's basically most of the runoff that comes down Forest Avenue, and those streets do hit a drain that then goes through the park into the duck pond, from the duck pond onto the beach. The Park Commission engaged an engineer. They have come up with a construction plan that would divert the water through the corner of the park, down Palisades and Dearborn, Palisades. Dearborn into the Sound, sorry. They're pursuing county stormwater monies for a substantial part, if not all of it. They do not expect to be out of pocket for any of this cost. In order for them to pursue that, they do need a letter of support from the city, since it's our jurisdiction, and that we will be working with them on permits and right-of-way requirements and the like. And the city engineers reviewed this, and we are in support of it. So this would just be a letter of support.
So do we need to make a motion?
To authorize the mayor to sign the letter of support for the project.
So I will make that motion. Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, Joe and Greg, I'm assuming you'll start this off, presentation of the 2025 budget.
All right. The night that everybody's been waiting for. So Joe will be walking you through the presentation. I do have a few minutes of remarks. I'll promise I'll try to keep this as painless as possible, but there are clearly a lot of moving pieces here. All of the material, including the budget itself, has been posted to the city website. It's on the first page for anybody that wants to refer to it after tonight. This evening, I'm submitting for your review and consideration the 2025 budget. The proposed operating budget totals $49.3 million and will require a real property tax rate of increase of 6.12%. Of that total increase, 1.9 reflects returning Playland to the tax-exempt roll. Beginning with the 2023 budget, the city assessor placed the parcel on the taxable roll. As a result of a recent legal settlement with the county regarding the 24 tax roll, the property is again on the tax-exempt roll and will remain there until the earlier of a final settlement with the county or a decision by the appellate court. Excluding the adjustment for Playland, the tax rate increase is 4.22%. As a reminder, the tax rate is separate and apart from the tax levy, which is the dollar budget amount attributed to property tax collections. The levy is not impacted or affected by the change in the tax rate. The proposed budget is $427,000 over the cap rate, tax cap, and if approved, will require the City Council to override the tax cap. In my 2023 and 24 budget messages, I highlighted the challenging inflationary impacts on employee-related expenses and materials. For the third year in a row, the New York State inflation factor is greater than the mandated New York State tax cap of 2%. For the 25 budget, personnel and retirement expenses alone would otherwise account for a 5.6% tax increase were it not for revenue growth in some areas and a very targeted expense reduction. The city employee salary and benefits represent 73% of the operating budget. Each year, department heads are tasked with reviewing staff considerations both in terms of current needs and anticipated demand. Despite our acute focus on cost, a significant portion of labor expenses are mandated and determined by contracts, state, and our insurance provider. For 2025, we're budgeting an increase of $1.7 million. Health insurance projected costs alone are up 3%, and pension contributions are up almost 15% this year. The 2025 budget includes only two additions to staff. Over the last 4 years, Public Works has made significant changes in its approach to city projects, completing much more work in-house. This important initiative has saved the city a tremendous amount of money, both in the capital budget and in operating budgets. In this budget, I'm adding one additional administrative position in the Public Works/engineering department. As we have brought more of that engineering work in-house, there is a very obvious and apparent need for additional administrative support for Ryan and Eric. Secondly, in May, the council authorized moving the corporation counsel position to a full-time city employee, thereby moving this expense from a contract service budget line to personnel. The impact of this change is reflected in the budget in two ways. Number one, there is an equal and offsetting reduction in the contract service for the increased salary and benefits. They're almost dollar for dollar. Secondly, and more importantly, there's been a significant reduction in the cost of legal matters that typically would have fallen outside of the retainer. A number of matters that previously billed outside the retainer are now covered with salary. For this year alone, we estimate the city has saved almost $90,000. The legal budget for 2025 provides for a reduction of $160,000 versus 2024. The 25 proposed budget assumes all positions are filled. The difference between unfilled and budgeted positions, and you'll see this in the presentation, simply reflects the timing of the budget versus when we're hiring personnel. We do expect to fill all positions. However, because positions do take time to fill, whether that because of civil service procedures, training, or the search itself, all open positions in this budget are assumed to remain unfilled for 6 months of the year. By budgeting in this matter, we are reducing the tax levy by approximately $500,000. Our EMS contract with our Portchester Rybrook EMS service is among the best and the most responsive in the county, in the region, really. The city's budgeted contribution for next year totals just under $540,000. This is a budget increase of $90,000 over 24, reflecting both inflationary impacts, but more importantly, the multi-year planned step increases to enhance staffing and supervision for EMS. The Rye Free Reading Room has requested $1.43 million for next year, an increase of 3% over 24, and the Rye Youth Council has requested an increase of $5,000 over last year, and both of those are included in this proposed budget. The City of Rye is responsible for approximately 15% of any operating loss in Ryetown Park. In a typical year, we expect park revenues to cover operations or result in a minimal loss. As in past years, there is a $50,000 budget line for Ryetown Park. Any additional operational or capital expenses requested by the Park Commission are funded by other funds as authorized by the City Council in the course of the year. Moving to revenues. Non-property tax revenues are a critical part of the city's annual budget. Unlike property taxes, these are best estimates and based upon prior year's actual results and forecasted economic changes. Assume sales tax, mortgage recording tax, building permits, and interest income total over $9 million, or 18.5% of the total operating budget. Over the past 5 years, we've prudently and conservatively forecasted these revenues. Interest earnings for the latter part of 2023 and 24 offset the sizable reduction in the mortgage recording taxes. Similarly, we have continued to have strong growth in our sales tax revenues and have budgeted accordingly. I do not believe this year-over-year growth in these areas is sustainable, at least not at the same levels as the increase in labor and materials. Sales taxes alone account for over 8.5% of total revenues. Based upon revenues for this year, we are budgeting a slight increase in sales taxes for next year, going from $4.25 million to $4.3. Mortgage recording taxes equal 3% of total revenues. Over the last 5 years, mortgage taxes have totaled between $1.5 and $2.5 million annually. The significantly higher mortgage rates that began in 2023 and all through 2024 caused a meaningful decline in revenues as refinancings plummeted. Although the recent Fed action and market optimism will likely produce lower mortgage rates, for 2025, we're assuming the recording tax revenues will be equal to that of this year. Building permit revenue is budgeted to be flat to this year. We will project we're going to collect $1.8 million. The same will be for 2025. Interest income, one of the more important aspects of the last 2 years. For 2024, we budgeted an increase of $700,000 over the prior year budget based upon prevailing rates and the additional monies we've invested. In addition, the amended city investment policy has provided significantly greater flexibility and investment options. These changes have resulted in projected earnings of over $1.8 million in 2024. For 2025, we're reducing that budget to $1.55 million, $300,000 less, which reflects the recent Fed easing, expected additional easing through 2025, and also the fact that with our construction programs well underway, we're going to be investing less money next year. The general fund budget is $52.8 million with a property tax levy of $31.45 million. With this budget, I'm again recommending that excess general fund unassigned fund balances are utilized for capital investments. Based upon the city's general fund policy of maintaining a reserve equal to 10% of projected expenses, there is a projected $1.57 million of excess available for capital investment. As we did with the 2024 budget, this proposed budget modifies the use of the tax rate for road resurfacing and instead utilizes state grants and aid. Over the last 4 years, we've been extremely fortunate in our receipt of grants. This is a result of the exceptional support from our state delegation, as well as a very organized and aggressive approach to grants. I'm recommending that we continue to reallocate certain monies. In all cases, the amount allocated for roads and flooding and other critical purposes is not reduced in any way. Rather, we're allocating the monies more efficiently and cost effectively. The city maintains a contingency reserve fund for unanticipated expenses. In certain years, the fund is not drawn upon. In other years, it's in large part drawn down to zero. For 2024 to date, we have utilized $54,000 of the contingency fund for the Veterans Memorial, and then again tonight, $25,000 for First Amendment attorney assistance. Beginning with the 2022 budget, we established the first city fleet management plan. Through this plan, we estimate the annual cost of the city fleet, which is approximately 150 vehicles, is between 1.3 and 1.5 million annually. This includes annual fleet purchases as well as long-term investment in depreciated assets. For the 25 budget, I'm again recommending $1 million from the tax rate be applied to vehicles, as well as $700,000 from projected 24 surpluses. Of the $1 million, $600,000 in the tax rate was previously dedicated to street resurfacing, which, as I said before, will be funded in full out of state grants. The Capital Projects Fund has a current balance of $4.8 million. There are no recommended uses of surplus for the Capital Project Fund this year. However, again to note, a little under $900,000 is being utilized for flooding, stormwater system improvements, building improvements, and pedestrian safety. In 2023, the Council added $250,000 to the tax rate for flood mitigation and resiliency. The 25 budget continues with that investment. This year, we spent an estimated $1.1 million for local stormwater improvements. $500,000 was funded by the city and the remaining from state and county resources. For the proposed 25 budget, I'm again including $500,000 for stormwater system work. We're also continuing to pursue additional grants and aids to supplement this as we did for this year. Similar to the 24 budget, I'm recommending that $100,000 of the general fund surplus be used for additional improvements, including mobile speed signs, additional sign trailers for special events and notices, and improvements in pedestrian crossings across the city. Since 2018, the city has spent almost $11 million on street resurfacing. Identical to 2024, I'm recommending that for 25 we utilize only grant funding for roads, as I said before. The total budget for roads in 2025 is again $1.5 million. Revenues for the boat basin are forecasted to be a little over $1 million this year, with budgeted expenses of $773,000. For the year end, the boat basin is estimated to have unrestricted net assets of $1.2 million. And just as a reminder, they used a significant part of that last year for the dredge of the basin. The Rye Golf Club revenues are forecasted to be $6.5 million, with budgeted expenses of $6 million. For 2024, the golf club is estimated forecasted unrestricted net assets of $6.35 million. In addition, new for 2025, the club has instituted an annual capital charge for all golf memberships that is expected to raise approximately $100,000 additional, dedicated for capital improvements. The proposed 25 budget reflects the Council's policies, resident and visitor expectations for services and infrastructure, and sound financial planning. The 2025 budget is reflective of responsible fiscal policy and long-term planning. To accomplish this, the department heads and the city comptroller have looked critically at every aspect of city operations. We do not collectively take the financial responsibility entrusted in us lightly. According to the charter, it's my obligation to submit the budget of the council for your consideration. However, this budget, like all city operations, is the result of the collective work of each department head. My thanks to the city staff for this work over the last 4 months and for the conscientious work every day. As always, Joe Fazzino and his staff have done most of the heavy lifting for this budget and financial plan.
Can I just ask Greg one question? The year-over-year increase, is it 4.22 or is it 6.1?
The tax rate increase is the 6.12.
Because Playland was off the roll.
Because Playland,
right?
No. Playland came off the roll after the budget was adopted last year.
Okay, all right.
So there was 2 years in which Playland was on the tax rolls.
Right.
And then this year is the first budget since 2023 where it has been on the tax exempt roll and therefore not included in assessed evaluation.
So the increase, assuming we adopt these, will appear to be 6.12, but really what it is Playland's off the tax roll, so the pie is smaller, and so the real increase is 4.22, but everybody has to pay a little bit more because our Playland is
Because
no
the assessed
longer-
value of all city property has been reduced by approximately 2%.
Yeah, okay, great.
Hello, everyone. Just going to provide some color on what we just talked about. Some visual aids. We'll be focusing on just the general fund. Other departments will meet over the next few weeks for the budget workshops, and we'll get into detail on some of those other funds. But tonight it'll be just the general fund. So, our first slide is the high-level look at the general fund and the calculation of the 2025 property tax levy. This can be found on page 2-3 of your budget document. As we've talked about, general fund expenditures in total are about $52,780,000. We have general fund revenues other than property taxes of about $17.8 million, appropriated fund balance of $3,492,000, which leaves us with our property tax levy of $31,459,385. And that translates to a tax rate increase of $216.48 per $1,000 of assessed valuation. Which translates to about $312 for the average home in Rye, a $2 million home in Rye, $312 increase year over year. And now we have the property tax levy calculation. And remember, that's a little bit different than the property tax levy that we come up with for property taxes. This includes your special districts, Kirby Lane sewers, and Upper Dogwood sewer. And then we have some exemptions in here as well. Key notes on this calculation: the tax cap is 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower. Obviously, in this case, it's going to be 2%. And a tax-based growth factor of 0.79%. This year, we also have a pension exclusion of $50,082. So the overall levy increase is 4.38%, and we talked about, which is close to the 4.22% that we mentioned for the tax rate increase. 427,709 over the cap. Just to come up with how we calculate the increase in the 2025 property tax levy, our operating expenses, which is less contingency and miscellaneous equipment, is up $1,741,000. That's offset by revenues other than the property tax levy, increasing by $443,000, leaving us with the levy increase of $1,298,482. As I do each year before we get into the 2025 numbers, I'd like to look back at the prior year, or the current year in this case, and see where the city finished up and how we got our fund balance and all that good stuff. So basically, this is the same formula that it is every year. Our 2024 budgeted expenditures were less than the actual expenditures were less than the budget. And on the revenue side, the revenues are more than the budget. These results, again, have given us the ability to use fund balance for capital projects as well as to balance our budget. And we'll see a few of these items going forward. So slide 5, we'll start on the expenditure. Sorry.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
The electricity costs, do we get our electricity through Westchester Power?
We use NYPA, yeah.
We use
New York's Power Authority, I'm sorry.
We do not through.
No, I'm sorry, we
It's
don't. No.
directly. It's a special municipal rate through NYPA.
Okay, so it's not. Sustainable Westchester is just for residents.
It's
not
residential and I think
Right.
small.
businesses.
Small business.
Very small
Okay.
business, but not, NYPA's is.
Yeah, we don't get
basically
this.
discounted.
Okay.
Not even through Con Ed, it's through NYPA directly.
Okay. Salaries and wages are usually where we get our biggest savings versus budget. In this case, again, vacant positions lead to these salaries less than budget, $370,000 for 2024. As we've talked about, most of these positions will be filled either this year or beginning of next year. Cost of electricity is up $72,000, coming in at probably about $529,000 year over year. Largest source of electricity in the city is the street lighting. FICA expense correlates with the salaries and wages being down, so that's down $43,000. Health insurance across the city, including retirees, is down $417,000. The vacant positions that we've talked about more than offset the 12% tax rate increase. Health insurance increase that we saw for 2024. Last but not least, net cost overall for the Recreation Department came in about $140,000 better than we had assumed.
How many people, oh, I'm sorry, Joy, you go. I'm sorry, apologize. I was just curious, we have all the savings from personnel issues. How many openings are there currently?
Currently, I believe there are
6.
Yeah.
6, and how much of them
You'll
in
see
your
that.
process? We'll see it
Sorry.
eventually?
Go
Okay.
ahead. Go.
I'm just wondering what's the likelihood that those positions are going to be filled, and if we have new openings?
Well, we have, and this is a change in this budget from past. In the past, we've assumed that we were going to fill every open position on January 1.
Okay.
Right? In this budget, we're assuming all current open positions are going to take 6 months to be filled, and we're budgeting based upon that.
Okay,
That was my question, which is, I guess that's based on experience. It takes
Right.
6 months to fill somebody, but we're always in this position, right? Like, I feel like every year we budget for the full year, and then we find savings in the fact that there's a rolling. It's like
Which is why starting this year, we're not budgeting for a full year of filling those positions.
Is 6 months. That's based on just what we've seen,
It's
or is there a
it's-
chance that it'd be like 3 months, or?
Sure. I mean, it is, but I mean, you're going to have also, you're going to lose people in the course of the year. You're going to, I mean.
Yeah, I'm not
so-
challenging it. I'm
yeah.
just asking, like, if
I think,
6
look,
months is like what we normally see, or or are we just sort of guessing and then we'll follow that data over time?
We're guessing because it's harder, for example, it's harder to fill a firefighter position or a police position than it is to fill a labor position.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're taking a crack at anecdotal evidence that says, okay, we're going to assume for this year it's going to be 6 months. I mean, keeping in mind the budget surplus this year is going to be less than 4% of the total budget. So
Yeah.
it does generate, we do generate surpluses at times, but it's
Yeah.
awfully hard to.
It's hard to nail it, but
Nail.
I would just be curious to see, let's just track it to see, okay, we're guessing 6, but if we come out over because we were more towards 4, then the next year we would do 4 months based on, you know what I mean? A 8-month versus a 6-month sort of look.
Yeah.
Just data driven, that's all.
And I'm assuming it's a budgeting approach, and obviously doing a 6-month is a little less conservative than assuming that the
More.
positions are filled
Yeah.
January 1.
Right.
And this is something new that we haven't
No.
done in the past. It makes
Right.
sense. As
Yeah.
we talked about with Bill this year, it made some sense to do this, to look at this, because year over year you are having, in some cases, sometimes $1 million worth of savings between salaries and benefits.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge savings, and the closer you can get to accuracy in your budgeting, the better.
Correct.
So it makes
Yep.
sense.
Helps to get the rate down.
Well, it does,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Exactly right. Okay, thank you.
All right. Next. Then on the other side, we have our actual revenues versus budget. Greg talked about this a little bit. Sales tax is the biggest one. It's pretty flat. It's a little up year over year, but there was like a 73% increase for one quarter in the first quarter, actually, this year by the state. We don't know for what, but it gave us a decent bump there. So we're looking at $4.5 million of sales tax. Interest income, again, money on hand, interest rates remaining high. And again, property tax levies on both the city and the county. We get to hold on to that county money for a while, so that generates some additional income there. Building permit revenue, flat, coming in where we thought it would be. On the state aid side, there's a one-time municipal aid given by New York State. One time, they made sure to say one time, 15 years at the same level. So, hey, thanks for that. Mortgage tax, we pretty accurate on that one. We said 1.5. It's going to come in at about $1,520,000. Last, again, we've had a lot of reimbursement from FEMA. This is still going back to Ida, some of it, and we also had the August 2023 flood. So those totals there above budget are about almost $1.3 million, headed towards that surplus that I talked about of about $2.4 million. And these are just some other charts before we move on to 2025. This is your unassigned fund balance versus total expenditures for the general fund. We kind of go back to the beginning of the Great Recession, and you see that it starts to accumulate the fund balance, but it was at the expense of capital items, as the city did not invest in a lot of capital until 2015, when we started, artificially or informally doing a 10% fund balance policy. 2018 and 2019 is when the council adopted a formal 10% fund balance policy where anything in excess of 10% is deposited into capital investment or vehicle replacement programs. You'll see in 2023 we're about 13%, and if you remember back in September, the council authorized about $1.1 million to be transferred from our 2023 surplus into the vehicle replacement program. In
The purpose of this chart is to show we're not taking in too much money and kind of squirreling away a lot of money. Is that?
We're not just keeping it with no purpose. The capital reserve was created for that specifically, and keeping it right at 10%. You'll see at 24 is the plan anyway.
The rating agencies like to see policy. They like to see somewhere in an operating entity around 10%. That's your worst case scenario rainy day fund. There are obviously significant reserves over and above this, primarily for capital projects and for vehicles. But the discipline is that we're only maintaining the 10%, and then everything else is being swept into long-term investment.
Like, it'd be a problem if we had it up at 30% too, and people would be like, why are you taxing us so much?
Right, but the whole discipline of moving it into things where we know we're going to have these capital projects is just so that we're planning for that too.
And the council will still make the decision as to how we purpose that money as well from the capital reserve or vehicle replacement account. It still comes before you when we use it. So, another charge is the change in the tax rate. City main. Let me just get to that one. The history of the tax rate. We've had 6 years above 3% since 2010, and only 3 years above the 4%. 2017 is kind of the outlier. We added $600,000 of capital investment for streets into the tax rate, which translated to almost a 3% tax rate alone there. 21, we were really unsure with everything given COVID, very conservative of our revenue estimates. And New York State, I think we had double-digit pension increases there as well.
The 2% of that 6 is due to the fact that Playland's no longer on the tax rolls. Is that right?
That would be for 2025, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
It would be 4.22, as mentioned.
If it was apples to apples, we'd only be around 4%.
Correct.
4.2, I think.
But in 23, you probably would have had closer to a 6% because it went the other way. Like Playland was on the roll, you would have had a much larger increase in 23. And 24 for that matter. Any questions before I move on? Okay. We'll start on the expenditure side for 2025. Proposed expenditures are about $52.8 million, or $1,844,000 over 2024. Highlight some of them here. Largest component, as usual, is salaries. In this case, it's $1,066,000. Few components to this one. You have your contracted salary and step increases for 2025. As mentioned earlier, 2 new positions, as well as some additional overtime expenditures. Please note that all the union contracts were settled in 2024, so we have budget certainty in salary through 2028, at least. Please keep in mind as well, for the first time, we're taking 7 positions and budgeting them for 50% of the year, so offsetting the overall increase in the salary number. One last item that we are doing this year, as we've seen a surge, is employees are opting out of city-provided health insurance and receiving a medical reimbursement for a portion of the premium that the city saves by not having employees on the health insurance bill, which is added to their salary.
So is that optional?
It's optional, yes.
So if new employees came on, how do you sort of?
They're given that option when
they're given that option,
yeah.
and how, is that accounted for?
We account for that.
Or?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So if the buyback, the medical buyback would be included in their salary on our worksheets, and then the insurance would not be an expense, obviously, to the city.
Do they have to have, is this because their spouse is on insurance?
Spouse is on.
This is a program that existed for many years, but the benefit to the employee was so minimal that no one was taking advantage of it. The savings to the city of having an employee taking their partner or their spouses or their parents insurance is very valuable to us. So we changed the formula this year to encourage more people to take advantage of it, which accrues then to our budget and to the taxpayer. And so we went from 2 or 3 people to...
I believe we had like 13 people over the last year do that, make
so
that shape.
It's a great service for this. Yeah, and it's completely volunteer to the and if circumstances change for the employee, there's nothing that precludes them or prevents them from coming back into the city's policy.
And yeah, it's a hard number to predict, right?
Yeah. And in the cases, sometimes a spouse and our new employee actually still has his parents' health insurance. So, God for that. Building and vehicle repairs and maintenance is up $133,000. Again, if you notice the asterisk here, this is a non-recurring expenditure or kind of like a contingency account for these repairs and maintenance. It's not through the property tax rate. We went up in this area just as over time, as buildings and vehicles get older, they require more maintenance and repairs. Perfect example this year, the boiler systems and the HVAC systems for the police and fire departments both needed extensive repairs and work. So, again, that's the reason for that.
Joe, you said the increase in electricity is due to street lights, or you were saying that's the
Just
majority?
overall, that was the largest contributor to yeah.
So why is there like a bigger, why do we think 63,000 more?
Well, our projections were about $70,000 more than budget last year, so I'm kind of keeping in line with the 24 number.
Got it.
So it's a little less actually, but it's still it's a conservative number based on last year's cost versus where we were through. I think I did it through September.
Okay.
Risk interfund charges translates from a 10% city liability insurance increase. So we have the interfund charges to the risk retention fund. Contract agency costs are the Rye Free Reading Room and Rye Youth Council. Mentioned earlier, decrease in legal services and EMS services are increased this year, which we'll talk about during the workshop. Miscellaneous service contracts are just, general. I think it translated to about 5.75% overall for all the miscellaneous service contracts across the city and kind of, the different agreements that we have with our service providers. New York State retirement program had 8% and 8.6% in 25 for the employee retirement and the police and fire retirement systems respectively, coupled with increased salaries, has led to the almost $614,000 increase there.
That's nothing we can change, right?
No, it's an actuary study-based item that comes from the state, and it's for current employees only, not retirees, but for funding for current employees' pensions. FICA expense is up $137,000. It goes directly with your salary increases. Some fairly good news. The overall employee and retiree health insurance budget decreased by $166,000. Several factors here. The city received guidance recently forecasting a maximum increase for NISHIP or the New York State Health Insurance Plan of 3%. Had we had another year of increases like the past two of 15% and 12%, we'd be having a very, very different conversation tonight regarding your budget. On the employee side, there's a decrease overall of $335,000. As I just mentioned, partial year salaries also translate to partial year health insurance. Another factor for the drop in the overall health insurance is, again, hirees coming in with single plans versus a family plan, which is a significant savings there. And again, as I just talked about, the city is saving money by offering this medical reimbursement buyback as opposed to taking the health insurance. So all three of those kind of are the big offset for the $335,000. Retiree health insurance overall is up $169,000. Additional retirees and resignations, along with the rate increases of about 3% budgeted, are the drivers there. Just lastly, the decrease in capital transfers is just a little less fund balance than we had available last year to us. So just transfers to capital will be $200,000 less use of fund balance. Any questions? Okay, these are a couple of quick charts, just expenditures by group. Obviously, the most cost drivers here are the salaries and benefits combined, 68% of the total budget. Contracted increases, contracted health insurance, New York State retirement. and by different functions, fire, police, and building department, public safety is the highest number on this graph here. Summary of the authorized positions for full-time staff for each city department. As you see, 2024 filled position is based on a date of November 1st filled positions. As Greg said, that there were, I believe, 6 unoccupied positions at the moment, 4 in DPW, 2 in police. And you see the 1 additional employee in the public works admin slot for number 5. And this graph kind of just shows us the medical expense of the city overall from 2010. You see the kind of dip in 2019 through 2020, which was the city moving its employees from Aetna to the New York State Health Insurance Plan, or NISHIP. Some notes there. There's been a sharp increase since COVID of almost $2 million beginning in 2022, hoping some easing beginning in 2025. Retirement expense again. Saw some sharp increases early during the recession, and since the end of COVID, I guess you've seen a couple of large increases on the retirement side as well.
Hey, Joe?
So retirement meaning pension costs, not retirees, sorry.
You see the medical expense line in the graph, and then this graph towards the last couple of years, the line's going like that.
Yep.
Do we expect that line is going to continue like that?
I mean, I'm hoping that a lot of people were in our position this year and could not absorb another 12 to 15% health insurance increase, maybe through, speaking to politicians in Albany, I don't know, but having a maximum of 3% this year was a savior for all of us, I think. In terms of other municipalities, we're all kind of talking about that. That was a concern, and, being on night shift.
Where did the maximum 3% come from?
We were just given guidance that was what the maximum increase was going to be. We don't get that until December, so we'll have it before you adopt the budget. God forbid anything changes, we can always let you know.
So, Jamie, what's happened in the past, unfortunately, is that we, just based on the last couple of years, say randomly we think it could be 10%. And then a week before the budget's passed, we get an actual number from the state, and we have to adjust it through some contacts that Brian had in Albany. He was able to get some guidance that they're not expecting more than 3% for the NISHIP increase. So we have at least some factual numbers this year as opposed to just a wild guess.
Again, obviously, we'll come back to you if there's anything of concern prior to adoption. Talked about this a little earlier, and it's kind of been our, message over the last few years. Can't have your elastic revenues keep up with these personnel costs. You see the graph is basically from 23 on for the expense side. The top orange line is your personnel costs, salaries, and benefits and taxes. You see the other lines below is the budgeted revenue on the top, the actual revenue on the bottom. You see they're beginning to converge as we've begun to really max out our assumptions on these elastic revenues. We're trying to budget as close as we can while still being conservative each year. But again, as you see, that line is starting to flatten out.
Good question. You've got, does the personnel costs here include retired costs for retired personnel?
I believe we used, yes. So it's your retirees and your actual employees. Okay. So health insurance, pension expenses, salaries, and whatnot.
So could we get, not now, but in the coming weeks, just how many retired personnel are covered by this? I just think we lose sight, or at least I do, of how many folks we're paying for who are here working for the city, and seeing that some of this is stuff that is just a commitment that we can't really do anything about, and that doesn't make it good or bad or anything. It's just a different thing, and so it's not a lever or consideration, because you run a very lean and efficient operation from what I think most of us can see, but then you see this, and it doesn't always, you don't get credit for that with the orange line.
So a couple of points, and thank you. We will certainly get precise numbers. So we contribute, for current employees, we contribute pension every year, and we contribute our portion of health care. As soon as someone retires and goes into the state pension plan, our obligation for the pension portion of that for a retiree ends. It's now the state's obligation or the state pension plan in order to do that. As you point out, Josh, health care, on the other hand, is for someone who vests that's a permanent obligation of the city. The last time I looked, I want to say, Joe, we had around 160 retirees, which is roughly equal to what we have in current employees.
I was going to say it's about the same amount.
Presumably, many of those are now in Medicare or will be shortly. So it's at a reduced amount. However, going back a number of years, the city's contribution to employees and therefore to retirees was a higher percentage than what it is, today.
Right.
But we can certainly get you more precise. But it's roughly equal to the number of current employees we have.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Again, once an employee retires, it's just the health insurance at that point, which we can provide you numbers on specifically what that cost is every year.
Great, thank you.
Anything on the expenses before I move on? Okay, so this is the revenues other than the property taxes. Just to point out here, so on the revenue side, this number increased by about $443,000 since over 2024 budgeted numbers. It may or may not seem like a lot, but just keep in mind last year we were able to increase our other revenues by $1,950,000, which offset a lot of the increased expenses that we were talking about. So again, we went up $1.5 million more in 24 versus 25.
Why do we think there's going to be so much more street opening? That makes me nervous because we're
getting right there. So perfect question. So it's a good segue. The largest one besides the sales tax is the street opening surcharge of $75,000. It's a surcharge that we use for the street repaving opening. Every time somebody does a permit, they get a surcharge. We've increased this fee for utility companies it's proposed in your budget, from $500 to $1,000.
So it's just we're expecting this is not an indication of expecting more streets to be open, just a higher cost to
Correct.
do so.
Right.
For the utility company, not the residents.
Right. So for a resident, for a sewer hookup or whatever, we're not changing the surcharge.
The utility surcharge.
It's for Con Ed, Veolia,
Yeah.
and all. We're increasing the surcharge for them.
Got it.
I mean, that's basically 90%.
If you open up the street in order to attach a sewer line, stormwater line,
dig a hole in it.
If they,
yes.
yes,
Okay, all right,
yeah.
okay, I got it. We're not adding streets.
No, we're not adding.
Well, it's a function of either the cost to do it, which good, versus opening more of them, bad.
No.
All right.
And that's 90% of our permits is from either utility company.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you.
And again, pretty lean here on the revenue side. There's not a lot of numbers that really jump off the page here.
The sales tax, we got $4.5 million this year.
Yeah, and again, there was that huge number at the beginning of the year. I'm not really sure what that was, but again, year over year, this $4,350,000 is more in line with that, without that outlier, and similar to 2023, right around $4.3 million.
You feel more comfortable with that number than the 4?
At the moment, I do. Yeah, just based on the last 3 years, including this one, where we're going to. If you took out again like that outlier, I think you'd be around $4,350,000. So we've kind of. I mean, we'll see where it goes. It's kind of stayed around here, so comfortable with that number for the last few years.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
And this includes the share back from the county that was started a little while ago?
The additional 1%.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's in this figure.
Yes. I mean, we were
Pretty much the majority, right?
Well, we were probably around 3.6, 3.7 before that. So and with inflation, the cost of goods obviously gone up. It's for sure. This chart just gives us our budgeted revenues for the year. Year over year, this is about 30% of your total revenues is this group. Again, the biggest control. Let me go back for 1 second. Just one thing that's not on this chart, as we talked about earlier. You have your building permit revenue, you have your interest income, and you have your, what's the other one? Mortgage tax, all flatly budgeted for 2025. 1.8 million, 1.55, and 1.5.
Thank you.
So again, 30% of all of our city revenues come from these numbers on this chart. Sales tax is far and away the highest. And then you have your building permits, interest income, and mortgage tax. And again, just to reiterate, that state aid number has not changed since 2009. Capital spending, we talked about this already. Just to kind of summarize the different revenue sources for each capital item. We have $1.25 million in the tax rate, $1 million for the general vehicle replacement program, $250 for flood mitigation and resiliency. Then our use of fund balance, $700,000 for vehicle replacement, $125 for buildings, $150 for the annual sewer maintenance program, which we moved out of the tax rate this year to save on the tax rate, $100,000 pedestrian safety, stormwater improvements, $500,000, and quick note, all of the funding for streets in 2025 will be coming from the state.
This does not include like the stuff that's being done at Disborough and
No. This is to show out of this budget and out of fund balance.
out of the general fund.
Out of the general fund. So that doesn't reflect bond proceeds, expenditures, the existing capital projects fund, state grants and aid, all the stuff that we covered in August is not part of this.
Last couple of slides here, just the average tax bill for a property in Rye. These are the 2024 rates for the city, for the county and the school district. These are the 25 rates for the library and the city. City comes in about 17% of your overall tax bill each year. School 61%, county 21%.
And Joe, just to underscore, the 6.2% proposed increase is 6.2% on 17% of
Correct.
total taxpayers.
6.1, yes, that's correct. That number has been the same year over year. This is how we stack up against our neighboring municipalities. Same area. These are all of their 2024 tax bills versus our 2025 tax bill. So we're much lower than all of them except for one, which is good still. They haven't come out with their increases yet, so wait and see there.
Are there any other municipalities around us that are lower than us?
Based on this chart, I haven't seen any.
Because I always, I don't know, it's like it's easy to compare ones that are higher.
Right. We try to keep comparable communities, too. I'm sure there are.
But no, we're not seeing anything close to where we are right now.
I know, Bill, in the past, and it's kind of not really a useful number, but we were always in the lowest few out of sort of 20 peer communities. So leave out Mount Vernon and Yonkers and places that are completely different from Rye. But out of 20 peer communities, we were usually in the very lowest collection of bottom 2, bottom 3, that kind of thing. Similarly with our schools. Rye's always been extremely high value for what you pay, even if you feel like you're paying a lot.
This last slide is a summary. Tax rate increase of 6.12%, 4.22% excluding the adjustment for playland, $312 or $26 per month for the average home in Rye. Tax levy increase for 2025 is $1.2 million, almost $1.3 million, $427,709 over the New York State cap. $2.825 million designated for city vehicles and buildings, flood mitigation and resiliency, annual sewer maintenance, stormwater improvements, and pedestrian safety. Funded 1.575 appropriated fund balance, 1.25 through the tax rate. 1.5 million assigned for street resurfacing from grants and aid. Just some key dates to remember. November 13th is our first budget work session. We have November 18th budget work session. December 4th is the public hearing on the 2025 budget, and then hopefully on December 18th you'll adopt the 2025 budget. One last item on the public hearing. Please keep in mind, if you have any proposed council changes to this tentative budget, they can be approved by a simple majority prior to the opening of the public hearing. after the opening, it's going to be 5 supermajority approval there.
Wait, say that again, Joe?
So you need a supermajority after you open the public hearing, if there are any changes
Okay.
proposed at that
After
point.
the 4th of December. So
Okay.
we're going to go through these budget workshop sessions
Okay.
and things. If there are any changes, we can do that by a simple majority. You need a supermajority after we've actually gone public with it on the 4th.
Typically, the council does that at that meeting
Yeah.
prior to
Prior to
opening,
opening it.
and all your changes?
Julie, you can't, you're not permitted to make changes during the work sessions.
Right.
You can at the next 2 council meetings, and you can on the 4th as long as it's prior to the public hearing being open.
Right. I guess my point was we will have the benefit of these workshops
Right.
behind us.
Correct.
And then there is ample time to make any changes prior to opening the public hearing. Once the public hearing on it is open, then it's the supermajority situation.
So November 8th, I just want, so the community knows, November 18th is a Monday,
It's a
right?
Monday.
So then we have the meeting of the November 20th if we wanted to have a discussion about changing the budget
Yeah.
before the opening of the hearing. I just want to be really
on the
clear on the
4th.
dates.
And on the 4th.
And these are
Before
all
we open.
on
Great.
These are all workshops are also on the city calendar
Great.
already.
Yeah, no, I saw them. I just was,
Thank you, Joe.
thank you.
Please keep in mind, there's a lot of information here. I know there will be more questions than were asked tonight. You can always call me, email me, or stop by with any questions.
Count on it, Joe.
The only last point I want to make, and because this has come up in past budgets, is we talk a lot about the use of fund balance, is that the operating budget is completely funded out of tax revenues and other permit revenues. We do not use any fund balance in any way, shape, form, or fashion to supplement the operating budget.
Okay.
So that's all being reinvested in the community in capital or in cars and the like.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Awesome
Joe.
as always. So now we have to set the public hearing for this budget on December 4th. So can I get a motion for that, please?
I'll make it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we also have to set a public hearing to adopt a local law to override the state tax levy limitation, which looks like what we're headed for. So can I get a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have to
And
reiterate.
just to be clear, you're going to set that for the December 18th meeting,
It says December 4th on here.
No, the second one.
the second one, for the local law.
Yeah, that's not on here, but we can, to be clear, that's what you're telling me to add? Okay. So the public hearing to adopt a local law to override this tax levy limitation is set for the December 18th. All right, so now, can I get a motion on that? Okay,
So moved.
seconded.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Old business, new business. I'm going to just say one more thing, one more plug for the Veterans Day event, which is always so beautifully done on the 11th. And we are in good shape for the new memorials, so I'm very excited about that. So can I get a motion to adjourn? I'll make it. Go.
I'll make it.
You make it. Second?
Jamie.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
We will see everybody on Monday.
See you on Monday.